5:30 after 10 o'clock, and I love doing this. It's just so much fun to wake somebody up in California. Sam Marx, how are you?
Well, I'm waking myself up thanks to you.
Are you?
I'm fine. I was in New York yesterday. When you write a book, you're supposed to put it away and forget it, let people read it. Instead, today you have to run around the country.
That's writing is only half the process, I guess. The next of it.
I'm beginning to think it's 1/10 the project. Really, I'm not kidding.
Do you like to do the interviews?
I'm not sure. I don't mind them. I guess everybody likes to talk and loves to have people listen. And the interesting thing about being interviewed on the air is that if they want to listen, they got to stay tuned in and they can't interrupt you.
Yeah, that's good.
I think so.
Anyway, you're a good guest. We had you on when we talked about Irving Thalberg and Louis B. Mayer with...
Yes.
How long ago was that? That's been...
I call myself a 15-year-old writer because I wrote my first book when I finally got free of a lot of other jobs. And it's been 15 or some years. It may be 17. I may be getting older.
Okay. Well, I think I talked to you more recently. I think it came out in paperback.
Had a gaudy spree, and it did come out in paperback. Mayer and Thalberg now. Samuel French is putting it out right now.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a good book, and so is this one. Let me compliment you. I know you were story editor for MGM for a number of years and bounced around different studios for a while, eventually winding back at MGM. And you wanted to write, but never were given the opportunity. In fact, didn't Louis B. Mayer or somebody say, no, I'm going to put you ahead of the writers. Don't worry about being a writer.
Absolutely. Mayer said, I'm going to make you a producer.
Yeah. And you did produce some films, didn't you?
Oh, yes. I did Lassie Come Home, which I liked very much. I did a couple that I won't tell you about. I didn't like very much.
Actually, because of Lassie Come Home, you got to know Roddy McDowell, who helped you with this book, didn't he?
Yes, he took a picture of my collaborator, Joyce Van der Veen, who's much more attractive than I am. And that picture is in the cover of the book. And Roddy is a marvelous guy. And he just said, here it is, use it.
Sam Marx has been in the motion picture game for a long time, and I know we talked about how sad it was to see MGM being sold off. We talked a lot the last time I had you on.
Well, this is a kind of anniversary of that, because I've just heard that the deal to sell MGM to Peretti of Italy and Pathé seems to be complete. And Mr. Kerkorian, who made billions of dollars, I think, selling off MGM, has now finally sold his last piece of it.
So there's really nothing left to tear apart then, really, huh?
Disappearing into the sunset. There's no question. But the films will last forever. I think we can thank Mr. Ted Turner for that, who bought them and keeps showing them.
For about $1 billion, you point out?
Yes, but don't forget that 100 years from now, he may still be making money on it.
Yeah.
And I think he made a wise investment.
Yeah. It's a kind of a scary thing when you think about the video possibilities and all the rest of it, where people can have the thing and then keep it in their own possession, and how do you make more money with it? However, they keep coming along with new technology, and who's to say that new equipment won't come along, and somebody who owns a copy of Gone with the Wind today won't want to go out and get it on some kind of special new equipment 5 years down the road or something.
Well, that's the way the world goes, and I think it's going that way.
Yeah. Deadly Illusions is the name of the book we're going to talk about. When I talked to you the last time, you alluded to the fact that you were working on a book about Jean Harlow and Paul Byrne. And
it turned out to be a long pull, because we investigated every every piece of that we could, and it took us around the country to do it.
And as it turns out, one of your leads that really made sense wound up just being found in the nick of time, because somebody passed away just within days after you talked to them, didn't they?
That was fellow Quinn, and that was an amazing coincidence. It happened to be the anniversary of the day that Paul Byrne's body was found. Paul was Jean Harlow's husband, only married to her for 2 months. And I went to the Beverly Hills post office on a Labor Day night. The place was closed, the lights were dim, and there was a man standing there, and he told me some of the things that he had been told by the MGM police officer, Whitey Hendry. And when I called a couple of days later, or a week later, to say we were using that material, he had gone. He was dead.
Yeah, you were talking to Jesse White, I guess, at the time, weren't you?
White, the man who pitches refrigerators, was a personal friend of his, and I called him for the phone number. He said, you better talk to heaven or hell. I don't know which way he went.
This is a great book. I like to read crime stories. Knowing that they're true makes them even more interesting. And I really got the feeling from reading the book that this has been something that's been bothering you ever since you knew Paul Byrne and when he was killed.
True, because I was an MGM executive at the time, and we were all berated into saying that he had killed himself because of impotence, which I and many of his close friends knew could not be true. But we went along with it because Mr. Mayer, who was a marvelous man, I only think of him as Mr. Mayer. I don't call him L.B. or Louis or some of the other things. And I do think that, and I'm not alone, every MGM survivor calls him Mr. Mayer. He said, we're going to stand together or we're going to be thrown to the wolves, because censorship had come out of the William Desmond Taylor case, the Fatty Arbuckle case, many important scandals of the movie business, and this looked like another one.
They were afraid that Jean Harlow could have a career that would just go right down the tubes if some bad publicity came out, and they were trying to protect her name, weren't they?
And the studio, too, exactly. And the whole studio, which also had Greta Garbo, Norma Shearer, Joan Crawford. And he was terribly scared of that. What he didn't know was that there was another woman in Paul Byrne's life. I knew it. A couple of the others may have known it. I'm not sure that any of them know it. Paul Byrne kept the other woman a dark secret.
Yeah. I just read Jack Warner, Clown Prince of Hollywood, by Robert Thomas.
Yeah.
And he pointed out in the book that studios really did have a lot of clout, and they had money to spend, and they could make arrangements with law enforcement agencies in some cases to cover things up. But reading your book, I really get the feeling that studios could be the victim as well, because there are aggressive police people or people in public office who would just love to get associated for prosecuting a crime or for dealing in any kind of story that would deal with a celebrity. So the studios were victims as well as maybe...
well, they became more so as time went on, of course. But I think it's marvelous how you just summed it up. But in my day, the head of the MGM publicity, Howard Strickling, really had the whole city in his pocket with the help of Mr. Mayer, who you see I call Mr. Mayer, because the studio was so powerful and the politics was so weak. And the district attorney was exposed later on as pretty much of a crook. And so consequently, they wouldn't have any problem covering up what, in this case, they covered up what was a murder, thinking that one of their stars did it. And then to their horror, they found that she didn't do it, but they better find the woman who did, or everything would go down the tube.
Yeah. I don't want to give too much away because...
either. I would love to have people read it. I'll be happy if they'll tell me what they think of it.
I liked it. I really did, and I found it hard to put it down.
How nice to hear that.
Yeah. I don't know, for anybody who's a movie buff, they certainly have to know who Jean Harlow is. I first found out about Jean Harlow, believe it or not, from a film I think it was called Making Whoopi with Laurel and Hardy. It was an old silent film.
Well, she came to Hollywood, very nicely educated girl, by the way, came from Illinois, and began playing very tiny bits in pictures. She finally did one movie, I think the title's in the book, in which they began to notice her. The business of the platinum hair, I believe, was a mistake of a hairdresser who turned her hair platinum, and that was the first time anybody ever saw that.
Yeah. You thank somebody. Now, I didn't bring the book in with me, but you thank, right in the beginning of the book, some people. One of them, I think the first one you mentioned, is from Evergreen Park, which is where my wife is from. She did have connections back here, evidently, huh?
There's a rather charming lady there who is such a Jean Harlow buff. I'll tell you about her if you want. But mainly, she is such a great follower of Jean Harlow that she buys every piece of memorabilia. She has a very happy, loving husband who supports this little quaint process of living that she does. And she will go anywhere when she feels there's something of Jean Harlow's that she can acquire.
Okay. I was wondering where that connection came in.
Yes.
Jean Harlow died tragically at 27 years of age?
They all did. That was a sad thing. Not only Jean, but Dorothy Millette, who was the other woman, and who Jean gave the name of Byrne because Jean paid for the gravestone when they found her body in the Sacramento River. They all died in a very short time, and I'm sorry to say that included Mayer and Thalberg. Mayer lived longer than any others, but Irving Thalberg died very soon, too.
Paul Byrne was an executive at MGM, and he had to convince Mr. Mayer, Louis B. Mayer, to cast Jean Harlow. He had some problems, didn't he?
Yes, he was making Red-Headed Woman. He thought that was the type of part she should play as a bright comedian who had her own way around men, and he made a secret test of her. And then, as a matter of fact, it was a beautiful test. She came off so well that she played that character in the dozen or so films that she made before she finally started Saratoga and then died before it was finished, the picture with Clark Gable.
Let's pick all this up again, and we'll talk about some of the, which had to be painful for you, some of the rumors that started about Paul Byrne. It must have been pretty painful for you to hear some of the things that were being said in order to do this cover-up thing. And can we do that in just a minute?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Corlick sisters on Denny's 10-minute guarantee for breakfast and lunch.
Rose and I are rock climbing to find the 10-minute guarantee.
You can't get the 10-minute guarantee up here.
You told me it was written in stone.
That means you can always count on it.
Count on what?
Getting a free meal if it's not served in 10 minutes.
I'd like it served now. I'm hungry.
They don't have the guarantee on this mountain.
Which mountain is it on?
It's not on any mountain.
Then look out below. I'm dropping in on Lenny's.
Denny's.
Try Denny's no-holds-barred, ironclad, written in stone, we really mean it guarantee. Monday through Friday, if your special breakfast or lunch isn't served in 10 minutes, it's free. 10-minute breakfast available 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. 10-minute lunch available 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. But only at your nearby Lenny's.
Denny's.
The Denny's.
Why limit yourself to a boring fast food meal? Go to Denny's and take advantage of their written-in-stone 10-minute guarantee where you will get your breakfast or lunch cooked to order in 10 minutes or you can enjoy it free.
You can go ahead and dream all you want about buying a brand new car, truck, or van, but after you take a cold, hard look at your budget and reality sets in, that's when you should go to Coy's Car Corner in McLean. Owner Coy Hutchcraft specializes in quality, late-model luxury cars, sports cars, pickups, and vans. Coy is a small-town dealer who gives you a square deal, and he provides excellent service on all makes and models. So if your taste says new, but your budget says no way, take I-55 to McLean. Then go east 1/4 mile on Route 136 to Coy's Car Corner.
Come on over to the Beer Nuts Outlet Shop. You'll find Beer Nuts gift packs, T-shirts, sweatshirts, and other fun stuff. And you can get Beer Nuts peanuts, cashews, and almonds by the pound. The Beer Nuts Outlet Shop, corner of Washington and Robinson. Open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Scare up all your treat needs at the Beer Nuts Outlet Shop, featuring 3 varieties of Halloween packs that make a great alternative to candy. Stock up today and receive a free trick-or-treat bag with your purchase.
Sam, I can tell that you're a fine writer. You've certainly done your share of reading scripts over the years, haven't you?
I figured out that we were having something like, I don't know, it's been a number of years now, but was it something like 40,000 or so a year that went into MGM? That includes newspaper clippings. It included readers all around the world sending stuff to us.
Yeah.
I had to get the brunt of the stuff and figure out which one might make a movie.
Yeah. Now, the lady we just mentioned, what was her name up in Evergreen Park?
Sandy Arcieri. And
Okay.
she's a charming lady whose husband allows her to go and acquire all kinds of Gene Harlow memorabilia. And as a result, that's a lady in Evergreen Park.
Mm-hmm.
Some beautiful pictures of Gene Harlow as a child are in our book, thanks to Sandy Arcieri.
And I bet most people have never seen those pictures before.
No, I never did.
Yeah.
I must tell you.
Yeah.
He had Howard Strickling once tell me that when they did their stills, they never showed anybody with a drink in their hands. He was very, very moral.
Yeah. Let me compliment you again. There's a quote that you have in here about every story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
That's up at the beginning, and this one, too.
Yeah, except it doesn't have to be in that order. And I forgot, you quote several people here.
2 people, and they were both authorities, and one was a movie director. The first one is by Aristotle, who, by the way, I never used as a scenario writer. Jean-Luc Godard, the French director, is the one who said a story must have a beginning, middle, and end, but not necessarily in that order. And that's what this book has done.
Yeah, and you do a great job because I'm never lost. You know, you set the thing up so well, and by the end, when you piece it together, it's the reader's going, my gosh, yeah, that makes sense. That's why this was where it was at the time and all that kind of thing.
Well, you're terrific to me. I can't thank you enough for my collaborator and I, and also our editor, Bob Loomis at Random House. He directed us in the way he thought the book should go, and we followed his directions, so that some of the book at the very end might have come earlier, but like Jean-Luc Godard said, it shouldn't necessarily be in that order.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I've never lost. You've had those books and scripts probably too. You start reading them, you think, now wait a minute, where am I? What period of time is this now?
Yeah.
And for this one, no, there's no question as to what we're doing. Let's set the thing up. Paul Byrne bought a house. Jean Harlow did not like it. They were married like 2 months.
Exactly.
And
all of that is true.
And then he is found shot to death in his bedroom.
Right.
And you're one of the first people on the scene, are you not? Well, not actually the first, but you get there early in the morning.
I thought I could have been close to the first. Irving Thalberg was sitting at the pool outside talking to the gardener, and I didn't know then, until many years later, that the head of our studio police was inside the house at the time I was there. He was rearranging the subject matter, the scenario that they would give to the world.
Yeah. Why, without giving it away, why were you sure that it wasn't a suicide?
Why was I sure? It wasn't until Joyce Vanderveen, who came from Holland and is a little more realistic than I am, kept saying, how can it be possible that this woman that you said was unconscious for 10 years, that's what Paul Byrne told me, in a coma, she is a ballet dancer, and she said, I don't believe she could get up and run around the country. Well, we began to investigate it. The other points really were that while the studio believed that Paul was such a gallant gentleman that he would kill himself for two women that he loved, Jean Harlow and Dorothy Millette, when they finally learned there was a Dorothy Millette, they bought that, and I went along with it to pretty much keep his reputation clean, and it still is with me.
But there were certain things being said that he was cruel, that he was...
Well, there was a book came out written by in collaboration with Jean Harlow's former agent. It was totally untrue. Anita Luce, Francis Marion, and I, and Howard Strickling talked it over. We were going to expose that book, and he said, what do you want to do, sell more copies? Keep your mouth shut. So we shut up. Mm-hmm. But that book exposed a feeling that was not true.
Yeah. You didn't know that Paul Byrne was upset. Now, he was just at your house shortly before that Labor Day weekend, was he not, in 1932?
Yes, he was. My wife and I had dinner for them at our apartment, and when my wife went to help Paul Byrne put on his overcoat, she dropped it. It carried two heavy pistols in their pocket. But they lived up in that canyon, and he explained that he was always there to protect Jean in case anybody tried to nab her.
Mm-hmm. But Jean appeared happy that night?
Well, wonderfully happy. And at the reception the day after the wedding, which is obviously he could not have beaten her, you couldn't have seen two more delighted newlyweds holding hands as they did.
And yet the story as it came out was that Paul Byrne was impotent and he couldn't perform, so that's why he took his life, right?
Right. That was put out by the studio. It helped save the situation, and it was a report that has persisted right up to this day. It's why Joyce Vanderveen have written this book. We tried to tell the world, it ain't true, it ain't true.
When you were working on this, Sam, did you get the feeling that maybe, or were you wondering, are we really going to be able to solve this, or are we wasting our time?
Oh, definitely. I'm not a detective, but I went about it with many suspicions. The suicide note, we had to explore that totally. It is not a suicide note, but it was given out as one. We went into so much. Miss Vanderveen, who is a ballet dancer before she is now an author with me, she is so thorough that we didn't let anything slip by. There are a couple of people involved that we would have loved to have found. We cannot find them to this day. One was Paul Byrne's secretary, Irene Harrison, disappeared, and the other was his brother, who came out and talked about Dorothy Millette, suddenly left California, went east. He went back to Connecticut, where he lived, and we have never been able to find him since.
The interesting thing a lot of interesting things that I found out by reading the book, but one of them that really got to me is how people, after all these years, were still unwilling to cave in to the idea that they weren't supposed to talk about certain things.
Well, that's true, but then a lot of people like to keep their own thoughts privately. Some of them may want to write a book themselves. I don't blame them. I hope they will.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Well, it will. I mean, I think it's true. Memorabilia has become a valuable asset to someone who is old enough and can hold a pencil.
Yeah. But here we are 50 years later, 50 years after a crime took place, when you're really piecing it all together. And, boy, it just makes for some fascinating reading.
And it's called Deadly Illusions.
Deadly Illusions, published by Random House. Sam Marx and Joyce Vanderveen have co-authored this thing. and you'll find it very interesting. As far as the movie business is concerned today, it certainly isn't anything like it was then. I guess there are still those people in Hollywood that do have clout.
I guess so, but they're mainly individuals. You don't have a great major studio in the sense that it comes out with a program of films it's going to make. I used to get a memorandum from Thalberg, we're going to make 2 Garbos, 5 Wally Beerys, 3 Gene Harlows, 4 Norma Shearers, and I had to go looking for the material for that. And you don't do that anymore. Every picture is an individual pursuit these days.
Yeah. I just wonder, we do hear an awful lot of reporting going on. Sean Penn, and we hear about what's his head with when the Democratic convention was going on and the videotaping that took place. We hear about these embarrassing incidents that do get reported today. I wonder if the same kind of thing would have happened back then, but they would have been covered up more easily.
Well, there's no doubt that the press was much more covered by the studio publicity people. I'm sure of that. And at the same time, scandal at that time was far more offensive than it is today. Today, they may make you a hero if you come out with a great scandal. I'm not saying that positively, but I can tell you that in the old days, you would have been run out of the business if you were caught in a scandal.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Sam Marx, I enjoyed talking with you again.
So did I.
Deadly Illusions by Random House, the story of the tragic death of Paul Byrne and his
husband of Gene Harlow.
Gene Harlow, certainly. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
10:26 right now at WJBC.